This is a quick video about what does it mean to be a Muslim. What does Islam mean? Well, Islam means submission, simply submission to the will of God. So anybody who submits to the will of God is a Muslim, technically. A Jew who practices the Sabbath for the will of God, for the sake of God, and not for his own will, and puts God's will over his own. So let's say it's Saturday and he wants to watch the game or something like that, but he's Jewish and he keeps the law of Sabbath. Him putting his personal likes aside for the sake of God alone and submitting his will to God's will, he's a Muslim. He's technically a Muslim. Anyone who does that is a Muslim. That is why the Quran speaks about Islam and Muslims as being a term that can be applied throughout the ages. All the prophets were Muslim because the prophets submit their will to God. They have to do what God tells them to do. Jonah was a prophet who did not want to submit his will, and he was punished for it, and then in turn submitted his will to God and went and preached to the city of Nineveh. In the beginning he didn't want to do it, but eventually he did it. He submitted his will to the will of God. He was a Muslim. All prophets were Muslim. Anybody who submits their will to God is Muslim. Now, the question then comes in, well, if these people are all Muslims, whoever submits their will to God, what about accepting the Prophet of Islam? Why don't they accept Muhammad as a prophet, peace be upon him? The situation with that is misunderstood by most people. If you don't know who Muhammad, peace be upon him, was, you can't be applicable to be punished for denying him as a prophet. The Torah explicitly states that anybody who comes, who speaks in the name of God, who's a prophet, you should listen to him so far as he speaks in the name of the same God as the God of Abraham, and what he says as far as a prophecy comes to pass. You have to support anybody who comes in the name of God, who says he's a prophet. If his prophecy comes to pass, if what he says is true, if it goes with what you've heard, and it's of the same God, you should support him. So the people who don't know who Muhammad is, as of yet, maybe they heard of Islam as a religion, but no one's ever really explained it to them, and they haven't had the mindset to think that they needed to find another religion. They're not really applicable for punishment in the same way that someone who knows who Muhammad, peace be upon him, is, and understands and believes it to be something that is true or thinks that it could be true, and then denies it, is someone who's liable for some sort of punishment in the hereafter. In other words, in Islam, we have a term called kufr, and you call people that are kafir, people who cover the truth, because kufr comes from a root word which means to cover. But what are you covering? You're covering the truth. That means to know it, but cover it and hide it. So someone who knows that Muhammad, peace be upon him, is a prophet, who sees what he reads the Quran, or he sees what Muslims are saying about this person, and still denies it, even though in their heart they know it to be true, that is someone who is practicing kufr, and the Arabic term for covering up, and is a kafir, through and throughout. But who knows that? Only God knows that. That's why they say that you should not try to judge people. You don't know what they're going through or what they understand. Their mindset at the time might be different. There's people who end up becoming Muslim later. There's people who believe Muhammad, peace be upon him, is a prophet, but continue to follow their own traditions, which I'll get into in another video, which is something that Muslims nowadays misunderstand, and they think that, everyone has to be following the exact traditions of the Muslims in order to be saved. That's a misconception. The idea of Islam, again, is the concept of submitting your will to the will of God. If you are a Christian, you follow the teachings of Jesus Christ, peace be upon him, and Jesus says to feed the poor, to do this, to do that, and he's saying that he's speaking in the name of the Father, which is a metaphor. He's speaking in the name of God. And you do that because of those teachings, and you submit your will to God when you don't really want to do it, but you feel like, it's the right thing to do, and I got to do the right thing. You are a Muslim, and you believe in the one true God, the God of Abraham. You are a Muslim. If you're Jewish and you keep the Sabbath and you keep the commandments that are in the Torah that you're obliged to keep, and you do it despite There's times where you don't want to do it, or you feel like, oh my God, I want to go to this game, or I want to watch this movie, or do this or do that, and you do it for the sake of God, no one else. You are a Muslim. If you're a Muslim, as far as the traditional religion given to the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and you follow those traditions, and you're a Muslim, and you do it for the sake of God and no one else, not to show off or anything like that, you are a Muslim. Remember, a kafir can be anybody. A kafir can be someone who calls themselves a Muslim, a Jew, a Christian, anybody, for different reasons. So it's something to be understood here that people have, they have a misconception about, is that Islam is a technical term, which means the idea of submitting your will to the one true God. So I hope this clears up any misconceptions, and any comments or anything that needs to be cleared up, just leave a comment below and I'll be happy to respond. Assalamu alaikum.